I came out through the gay liberation movement 2 years ago. Since then, the movement's almost become my life. I feel like it has to be that way because my life would be meaningless without it. Before GayLib, all I had was dreams and fantasies. I felt compelled to hide all my real feelings. I didn't know anyone else who I knew was gay. I had a lot of friends, but those relationships had to be based on a good deal of dishonesty. Most people don't think they have ever known any gay people, but they usually have. It may have been a friend, roommate, parent, neighbor, sister, or spouse, but they're usually afraid to tell their straight friends or anyone else for fear of their rejection. Well, I'm not willing to worry about their rejection anymore. I decided 2 years ago that if I couldn't be honest with myself and my friends, then life wasn't worth it. I guess the best thing that came out of coming out for me was honesty with myself and my friends. But I don't think I'll ever completely lose the scars from all those years alone and isolated, when I thought that there was no one else like me, or if there was, not knowing where to find them. And even if I could lose those scars, the straight world would never let you forget. It has ways of constantly reminding you that you're an outcast from it. I can't turn on a television or open a magazine without being bombarded by heterosexual propaganda. There are those who persecute us and who would put us in prison. And there are those who discriminate against us, depriving us of every conceivable civil right that others take for granted. The rights to jobs, housing, insurance, even our own children. But the phoniest treatment is the tolerance of liberals. Annihilation by blandness, we call it. They're willing to see us get our rights, but they're not willing to recognize ours as a valid lifestyle. That's what gay liberation is about, and that's what we're fighting for. We are demanding, not asking. And what we are demanding are our rights as human beings, which no person has a right to take away. That may mean, in part, changes in laws and institutions. But beyond that, we are not waiting for slow changes. For us, it is not a favor. We are in the process of taking those rights. We are determined to be ourselves, always aware that the obstacles to that goal lies all around us, but will not deter us. What we once thought was ours alone, we've learned through gay liberation is ours together. It's not oppression alone that we share, but also a beautiful way of living and loving. Our revolution is a special one, because it dares destroy the restrictions society puts on people loving one another. It threatens to transform the way all people relate to each other. Our people are found in all society and in all human history. We are finally coming together, but in the process we are changing much more than ourselves. Through GayLib, we do a lot of rapping to straight groups. I guess we hope that by educating them we can change their attitudes, but sometimes it's hard getting through to them. One of my main hopes is that I can get to gays who might be in the audience. They never speak up, of course, because they're scared shitless of the bigots who might be sitting next to them, and these are the people they have to live with. But I know what it was like when I was in school. I was sure I was the only gay person there. High school is usually the worst time for gay people. It's full of awakening sexual desires and dating and pure conformity. We're trying to get positive books on homosexuality in libraries and good coverage on radio and television. I spent a lot of time manning the gay switchboard telephone in the Second Foundation office, too. People are beginning to get word of it. A lot of really confused, lonely people call up. I feel like I won't be free as long as any other gay people are still being hassled in any way. I know the only solution is to give other gay people the courage first to come out and then to fight back. The best way I can do this is to be as out front as possible myself, to show them that gayness can be a happy lifestyle. So, for that, I'm willing to put up with the straight audiences who quote the Bible and ask me how many children I've seduced. They take all their own sexual hang-ups and lump them together, and if you're gay, you get all the blame. A lot of them are just afraid of the homosexual in themselves. Some are victims of Christianity and its anti-gay bigotry. The guys are especially afraid of any threat to what they call their masculinity. A lot of people just feel good having someone to laugh at, and if they didn't have queers to laugh at, they'd find someone else to mock, like cripples. A lot of gay people are forced to laugh at themselves to conceal their identity from straights. I used to be that way, but I don't intend to be laughed at anymore. The movement, as we call it, started with one single stubborn act of defiance of a black woman who refused to go to the back of the bus one day. From that came the black liberation struggle. And then the war came. We watched helplessly as our friends and brothers and lovers were dragged away, some of them never to return. The resistance, as it came to be called, was largely a liberation for the white straight male. It liberated him from the worst masculine role, that of having to kill and be killed. The hip movement freed him from restrictive clothing and style. It was only a matter of time before women and gays began demanding their liberation. As gays, we had a lot in common with straights our age, and in a mutual struggle, we reached a feeling of sisterhood and brotherhood with them. They were the first straights really willing to listen. They had thrown out a lot of conventional, traditional bullshit, and they were questioning everything. They demonstrated, got busted, used dope, resisted the draft. In short, they made themselves outlaws, which is what gay people had been for nearly 2,000 years. But still it's different for them. We work in the peace movement, but it's still the straight man's peace movement. We live in the counterculture, but sometimes it seems as much a straight man's world as middle America. The young, the hip, the radical still have straight privilege if they're not gay, and a hell of a lot of them are unrepentant bigots. For many guys in our generation, participation in the movement has been proof of their masculinity. They're anxious to prove that in spite of their unisex style and their refusal to go to war, they are still men. Women's liberation rose in reaction against the rampant sexism of the movement. Women in gay liberation found even gay men very sexist and soon found themselves closer to their straight sisters. As a result, gay males were forced to confront their own sexism more than straight males were, and in the process discovered the relation of their own oppression to that of women. For many radical feminists, lesbianism was the step of ultimate freedom from male dominance. She rejected the man as master and told him that she could be sexually satisfied without his almighty penis. But while the movement produced so many gay women, it produced very few gay men. For a man to become gay meant he was stepping down on the status ladder. Men's status is based, among other things, on ownership of women and children, and a position as lord of the family. His relationships with other men are supposed to be superficial alliances of convenience, without any deep emotional involvement. He is to be served by women, and he is to do his best to get to the top of the social hierarchy, so that he need not serve another man. Gay males are seen as misfits for this master class. Gay liberation and women's liberation are part of the same sexual revolution. The first is concerned primarily with sexuality, the second with sex roles. But really the two concerns are very related. Both movements attempt to hit people on a very personal level, to mend the wounds of alienation between the political and the personal that is a product of the straight male culture. We have not yet won our struggle, but we will win. And when we do, we will have transformed a lot more than just ourselves. Some people claim they can tell homosexuals just by looking at them. I wish they'd tell me the secret, because it would make things a lot easier for me. We're invisible. I guess that protects us in a lot of ways, but it also separates us from each other. That's why we have the gay ghetto. We're safe there from harassment and discrimination, and most of all, we know everyone else is gay. It's the only place we have to feel at home, and in that way it's cool. But it's also a bummer because it remains so separate from the rest of your existence. Bars are the main institution of that ghetto. They're usually pretty alienating. During the day, you always have to play it straight, especially at work. And at night, you can go to the bars, where all you have in common with the others there is your sexual preference. The bars are great if your friends happen to be there, but it's hard meeting new people. If you start talking to anybody you don't know, they immediately assume it's a sexual advance. And if they're not attracted to your superficial sexual looks, they probably won't respond. You look around and you think there are a lot of people you'd like to know, but there's usually no way of meeting them without them assuming that you want them for one night, this night. So, meeting new people is usually pretty clumsy. Relationships don't seem to last too long between gay males. Some people say it's because guys are naturally promiscuous, but I know it's more than that. A lot of gay guys have internalized the hate society has for them. As a result, they hate themselves and other gays. That's why in GayLib we spend a lot of time coming to terms with ourselves and building a new identity. If there's going to be a real gay community, we're going to have to build it, because it certainly doesn't exist now. But another factor that keeps gay males apart is the hatred this society has for closeness between men. Even two men living together arouses the suspicions of society. So a lot of gay guys find it easier just to have promiscuous sex, one-night stands. Quite a few get married and they try to hide their sexuality from themselves and others. They figure that matrimony does that, especially since it is such a measure of respectability in American society. But it doesn't work. The urge is still there. It only grows more painful and more alienated. What we are trying to do is build a gay community that is a true gay community. Up until now, the so-called gay community was frequently held together by sexual barter, in which one man saw another as necessary evils for his sexual satisfaction. But we want to build a community based on love. For lesbians, such a community is being built with straight women and the feminist movement. I don't expect as much from straight men, but it is a thing we must be determined to do alone if need be. I guess loneliness and lack of fulfillment is inevitable in this case. Sex isn't all of my life, but like a lot of other things, it's still a basic part of it. Whenever one of those parts has to remain hidden or has to remain separate from the rest of my life, I suffer from the resultant alienation. That's what the sexual act means for me a lot of times. You don't really know the person, and all you might have in common is a sexual attractiveness. So here I am, having sex as they call it. But I'm not sure what I feel, if I feel anything. I want to reach him on a deeper level. Horniness may be painful, but loneliness is even worse. It's especially painful when you're so close to people, but you're still lonely. I want to satisfy his loneliness, and I want him to satisfy mine. But I don't know where to start. It's a lot easier just having sex. But I know it doesn't have to be this way. Straights can meet other straights in jobs, in schools, neighborhoods, or on the streets. And they can assume that the relationship, first based on other things, can lead to sex, among other things. Gays can't do that unless they want to lose their jobs, or schools, or homes, or get their asses kicked on the streets. That's what real gay liberation has to change. Gay liberation, it's going to come, they keep telling me. It's going to come eventually if I just wait. But in the past 2 years, I finally learned who I am, and I finally know what I am. Most of all, I know what I want. I'm tired of waiting.